Hey, Johnny.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very, very good, actually.
Amazing. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing it was an eventful week with ETHSF last week. A lot of AI projects.
Yeah, great. That's amazing. Especially in San Francisco, that's what you kind of expect in these times.
Yeah, it's really nice to live up here because you could just drive 10 minutes. There's like something really cool happening with like 100 people. So it's a nice, it's a real nice luxury.
Absolutely. I'm a bit jealous. But I also had a good weekend. So this weekend, I can't complain. I went to Italy for a meditation retreat. So it's great. Still in Italy. Fly back tomorrow.
Oh, very cool. Do you feel at peace and zen?
Yeah, actually, yes. Very much.
That's awesome. By the way, do you know if Dami should be attending, right?
I hope he will, but I'm not sure. He did not confirm anything. I sent him a reminder, but let's see. Maybe let's wait 2 more minutes and then we just start. We can handle it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Shoot him a message. But yeah, a lot of maybe just to chat about it for a little bit was pretty exciting. There was a lot of ETH Foundation people. So the new executive director had given a couple talks. He founded a company, Nethermind, and yeah, they're doing a lot of really interesting things around. I think launching their own L1 chain actually called Chaos Chain, and it's like kind of governed entirely by AI agents. Which is really cool. So it kind of like set the initial like parameters of the chain. Via like agents. So yeah, just people like experimenting with a lot of like really interesting things. And yeah, I think the like DeSci and AI intersection is an interesting one for a few folks because even AI exclusive projects, I think Sci is going to be some big users and big providers of like data sets for them. So yeah, I think there's like certainly a nice overlap there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that there will be a long future for design and AI, since AI is kind of like a continuation of computation, and computation is one of the most important parts of science, right? The mathematical language that we use to express things accurately. So there's a long future there.
Yeah, and like even before kind of AI was this mainstream, there was a lot of like stuff in the machine learning realm that was being done. Like labs even a lot on like image processing. And Imling is like a really big one. So there's always been, I think, things there and on the large data side of things. But now AI is actually in the mainstream and it's like way more capable. So and I've been chatting with Dami quite a bit around like MCP servers and what that unlocks for like different applications that have those running. So there's just like a plethora of things that I think are not even on the horizon. They're kind of here. So it's really exciting times.
Yeah, cool. Any other things you saw in these stuff, like design wise, interesting stuff on design?
Yeah, I was at a Prime Intellects event, which was really exciting. And I bumped into a couple of DeSci projects there. One project in particular was launching something called it was a pump like for donations or something to that effect, where it's like kind of like pump.fund style, but a little bit of like the funds after it hits a certain milestone gets earmarked to be donated to different, like philanthropies or like charitable things. So we had a conversation. They're interested in having some of that pooled fund go into ResearchHub to fund some of the studies being funded. So yeah, there's just like a couple like interesting things around that.
Okay, nice. Yeah, the pump.fund model for more serious projects, I think that's being co-developed right now. Like that, basically after pump.fund's amazing success, I'm sure there's so many people right now trying this because I already know some. Now you're mentioning it to me that they are gonna emerge soon. Yeah, so let's dive in. I don't think Domi will join us because I don't see him in the chat, but maybe we can bring up some other speakers. Like I see Tyler in the chat. Maybe if they want to participate, they can just, anybody who wants to say something, raise a question, you can just like request a mic. I will share access to you at the moment where it's convenient. So let me quickly introduce the point of this community call. So this time, we're not just going over regular updates. We're also really focused, basically. So in a way, we're focusing on the project Artemis, which we launched, I think, 2 weeks ago as a pre-registration. So in the real world, peer review is really under immense pressure. So there's more papers, there's fewer reviewers, and basically the concern is that the trust in the whole system is kind of undermining, and less reviewers are showing up. So what if AI can help with this? That's what Project Artemis is kind of testing. And it's a bold initiative from the ResearchHub Foundation to kind of combine AI's precision in like mathematical analysis with human experts to improve the scientific peer review process. And we have Jeff here, the president of the ResearchHub Foundation, and he'll help me break down what Project Artemis is, what we have found out so far, what we're testing, and maybe what are some of the problems that we are overcoming, that we still need to overcome, and kind of what's the vision for it and how maybe the whole project Artemis fits not only into the ResearchHub Foundation, but into ResearchHub as a product and what it's delivering. So yeah, after we talk about Project Artemis, we're also going to go into more like regular community updates. Before we do that, Jeff, maybe tell us the story behind Project Artemis.
Yeah, so Project Artemis started, so, really it evolved out of like a need for like solving a problem that we had internally and generally, so as you mentioned and alluded to at the beginning, peer review is like a grander problem that everyone's, facing. So the turnaround times are extremely slow. A lot of peer reviewers aren't paid for that work, so there's no incentive for anyone to review it outside of like, participating in like a really large prestigious journal or something like that. So there's like a really big problem and a shortage of peer reviewers that are willing to review. And this is kind of at odds almost entirely with like the fact that there's like a growing rate of publications and manuscripts per year. And so I think this number is something to the effect of like increased by 50% over the last like decade. And I think the number is somewhere around like 7 million or so publications a year. So that's quite a hefty amount. And, you got to think like you get two reviewers per submission, if it's a peer reviewed thing at least. So you're talking like about 14 million who's at the very least, probably something like 16 or 17 million reviews that need to happen per year with no incentive for anyone to do it. And so kind of our first, stint at this was incentivizing the peer reviews on ResearchHub, which, kind of I think everybody knows here. So we're paying $150 per reviewer and they're reviewing. And that's great, and it's speeding up the timelines. It's allowed to have like certain prompts for the human reviewers to say, hey, you guys need to do this and this and this to earn the $150, which is it's all great, and I think it works well at like the current scope size and for the current costs. Now, I had done like a back of the envelope calculation of like how much it would cost us to essentially incentivize every peer review that like happened on all 7 million of those publications, and so, 7 million, we pay $150, dollars per review. So if there was just one review, you're looking at somewhere upwards of $1 billion for the year. And then if you have two reviewers, you're looking at something like $2 billion for the year. So, unless ResearchHub is, ResearchCoin is valued at, some exorbitant amount in the way billion, our emission rate probably couldn't sustain that. And also it takes time for these reviewers to do that work and things like that. So I thought it was like feasible, but kind of like a stretch. So then we bumped into a point where a lot of and some of our reviewers had begun implementing kind of AI tools to help with some of the throughput and speed up the rate of like the review process. And so we felt like initially they started off like not so great. Like it was pretty kind of poor. It would miss and omit a lot of things. It was very generalized. But like as the tools have gotten much more sophisticated over the last year, we started finding that like it became harder and harder to like decipher like that this was obviously an AI rated thing, and like it was starting to get like pretty critical and quite good at like the assessment. And so we thought, Dami started building a lot of tools around like kind of editorial toolkit to AI, and then created kind of an AI editor and AI peer reviewers, because we thought, hey, if you're paying $150 and if these people are starting to use AI pretty excessively, then what we should probably do is start generating our AI reviews. And we have, actually asked Jami the other day, we have about 100 AI agents right now in all various like fields of expertise. And we generated them, and, it costs maybe like 50 cents to $1 to run an AI generated review, which is, significantly cheaper than the $150. And so the way we think about that now is, okay, we have this thing, it can get you peer reviewed in like a minute. It's really low cost, 50 cents. So we can sustainably do this like the peer publication that ever came out. And the quality of them is getting really good. And then what the purpose of like the human reviewers is now, and the human validators, is to come in on top of that or kind of validate, affirm some of the claims made, or fill in the gaps that are there with the AI reviewers. So that's kind of the direction I think we're heading towards, and kind of what we're seeing natively happen. And then the last point I want to make is like that 7 publications a year number. That's, strictly based off of, human scientists doing their work and like generating, hypotheses themselves at the pace that they do, producing like the content and doing the experimentation at the pace that they do. So in probably not so long of a distant world, actually currently like a lot of like these AI co-scientists that are here that are helping speed up the hypothesis, steps, or the experimental designs, maybe helping you pick like panel designs for things, helping you with the publication process. People are using this to like process, literature way quicker. So the number of publications, I think it's not a stretch to imagine that this number is going to go up way more than the 7 million a year. So if it's going to go up way more than 7 million a year, and we already have a shortage of reviewers, something's going to break. And so in an effort to like counterbalance that, I think we need these AI reviewers to like help set a baseline of peer review in like a pretty timely and cost-effectively manner, and then kind of the human experts coming on top of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That like it's so much cheaper and probably also much faster at the same time to use AI here rather than paying peer reviewers. And I'm wondering, what have you found? Like you went a little bit into this by telling us the history, so to say, of observing the quality of peer review that we have incentivized on the platform, where you basically noticed that it was kind of more and more difficult to distinguish an AI peer review from a human-generated review. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the first findings? Because as I understood, you ran a pilot for Artemis before you like now scaling it up. What were your observations there?
So really like some of the initial pilot stuff was to figure out, one, to test like what foundations work the best to build like kind of the AI agents on top of. Obviously there's so many like frontier, foundation models like Gemini, there's all the ChatGPT, OpenAI ones, there's Claude. And so trying to decipher, which one of these to like build on top of was like the first stage. So we
Can I interrupt you here? Okay,
yeah,
no, you're doing it. I wanted to ask that question. Which one is the best? But you're already about to answer it.
Yeah, so we found that Gemini is actually probably the best for a lot of this like science-related analysis. And I think that's, at first I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And I actually like independently had chatted with a couple of teams that also said, hey, yeah, we're using Gemini for these things. And I guess it's not too far of a stretch because Google, has like, Google Scholar, and like they've been kind of in the science game for quite some time. A lot of their stuff is tuned to that. And you see this more with like the AI co-scientist that was launched by Google recently. So I think they kind of know they have, I don't want to say a moat, but like kind of a strong preference there. So yeah, so Gemini was kind of the strong one. And so we did some initial testing, and maybe with somewhere around like 100 or 200 reviews, and it was interesting. What we found was the reviews that were generated by the AI agents were pretty good. Actually, I would say better at catching like any statistical methodology errors or kind of mathematics errors, or little minute grammatical things, or if citations are off and not representative of like claims that are being made, like those kinds of errors. I mean, were great. Like if you guys, and there's a lot of probably some biologists in the audience, but as a biologist, a lot of time you're not trained on statistics. You kind of have to like fumble your way through it throughout like your graduate schooling, and because of that, you're not quite equipped to like really answer some of those types of questions or peer review that kind of work. But it's not like every paper has a peer reviewer that's a biostatistician. Only the heavy like data science related ones are. So these tools were really good in my estimation in assessing like, you used the chi-squared test when you shouldn't have done that. Why did you use a 1 ANOVA? Like that should actually have been this. That's a critical error, and here's like the severity of that error. That's where they were really good at. Where they were like pretty deficient, I would say, is more on like the kind of evaluation of like the significance and novelty, and just like generally how it fit into like the greater like field that the paper was in, which I think the humans did a much better job because they're much more well read on like all of the papers in that field. They kind of know some of the nuances that are not like so like abundantly like logic and black and white. So that was the dichotomy that we'd seen. So kind of at where we're at now, at least the way we see it is there's like this kind of like symbiosis that's happening where the human reviewer is really great at one thing, but then the AI reviewers are really good at this like statistical mathematics and like little things. And then when you combine those two together, like it makes it much more kind of fast and efficient to get the reviews done. But you're also covering more bases, right? Like the human's blind spot is exactly the strength of the AI reviewer, and the AI reviewer's blind spot is like the strength of the human reviewer. And so that's like a nice kind of like Batman Robin, combo.
Thanks for sharing this. So there's a lot of complementarity as I'm hearing. That's amazing. So like already it's kind of paying off. Like would you hypothesize that the actual performance of AI and humans together is better than a human alone?
Yeah, so I think that's like certainly the case. And it's like, it's one of those things, I think people find this all the time, where it's like, you find it to be like really amazing or really dumb at some things. So, it's up to like, I think the human's discretion currently, like to like kind of filter for like some of the things that they think, that the AI reviewer is good at, and implement that. And the caveat of this whole thing is like, that's kind of where everything is right now. And, it's hard to like look past the next couple months with all this AI development, because like every or so there's like some new infrastructure or some new like foundational thing that's been improved. And so it's hard to like kind of foresee where it's going to go, but like, it's hard to foresee where the ceiling is, I suppose. But from what I'm seeing from some other projects, and from some things that we're hoping to develop, is the AIs will just begin to like fill in much more gap, and hopefully there'll be like less and less burden on the human reviewer to get some of the work done there. So that's, and how the economics of that play out, and like what kind of marketplace gets built out around that, is going to be that interesting future.
Wow, so it's amazing that they're already kind of performing, basically improving performance. And it sounds like there could be a lot more like that you're foreseeing there. I have one question on how this works. Like you mentioned something like you have about 100 different agents working there. And when I ran my own paper through this program, it was kind of surprising on like how these agents work, and that there are like different roles within the system, different agents that fulfill different roles. Could you take us through that a little bit on how the AI review actually works?
Yeah, and this is where I wish Dami was here to a little bit more of the nuance, but I can do my best here. So generally, how it works is we have AI. We have some AI editors, and we have AI reviewers. And like the kind of high level of this is when a user submits a PDF of their paper, somebody else's paper, any paper that they want, the AI editor will then go and will essentially scan through the entire paper, and it'll make a judgment call on, hey, what are the 3 AI reviewers that are needed to essentially like give a thorough, like full encompassing review of this paper. So for example, if the paper was on like in Alzheimer's disease, and there was a lot of like immunohistochemistry in there, then it would probably pull a neuroscientist because it's Alzheimer's in the brain. It'll probably pull an immunologist because it's a microglia, inflammatory producers in the brain. And then they'll pull a pathologist because there's immunohistochemistry sections, which are sections of like images of living tissue, so you might need a pathologist. So that's the job of like kind of the AI editor. Then the AI reviewers, there's like a handful across these different domains, and those get kind of summoned to do their critical assessment, and they're kind of uniquely conditioned or trained on their respective fields of interest. So, maybe AI editor or AI reviewer in pathology is not going to make a claim on figure 1 because there's no, pathology slides. But maybe the neuroscientist one does because it fits into its domain. Versus like figure 3 might have a bunch of sections of images, and the pathologist comes in on that. So part of the reason, beyond domain specificity, to have it structured that way is it's related to domain specificity, but like even if you think about it, even like terminology within specific subfields differs greatly. So like one term that a neuroscientist might use might have like a totally different meaning within like the machine learning world. And to have one AI reviewer covering all those bases, it would start to, and I believe it does, get confused on what it's referencing and what's meant by the thing, and what it should mean by the claims it's making. So that's one of the big reasons to have this kind of like partitioned into like different AI reviewers. And then this is all kind of built, and then we have like a foundation model that this is all on top of using Gemini mainly. And the longer term goal here is and I think where ResearchHub, maybe we're getting too ahead of our skis, this might be later, but where ResearchHub really fits in here is like we have a network of experts. So if you think about it, like the low-hanging fruit is kind of like developing the agents. Like not that it's low-hanging, but it's a lot of people are pushing towards this effort. The hardest thing is finding expert people who can validate the claims that are being made there. So you can help essentially tune or reinforcement learning the AI. So that's where our strength is we have this network of expert reviewers. And so what we're going to do as part of Project Artemis is kind of have like an A/B test, like flashcard style, where we're going to place like a section of what the AI review had made a claim about. And then we're also going to have the similar claim being kind of addressed by the viewers. And then in like a kind of flashcard style way, have these expert validators come in, and we can source them from ResearchHub, have them come in and kind of, A or B. And that helps kind of tune our model to say, hey, AI review was great here, weight this parameter more, or like human reviewer was better. How do we take that and embed that better into like the AI logic? And one big thing I really want to shout out here is, and this is, in my opinion, I keep coming back to one of the most important things, and beyond just having a network of users, having like a verified network of users with their reputation available. This is like, I keep, every time I have these discussions with people, it keeps bubbling down to that, because you don't want anybody to claim, like Johnny, like if I made a claim about philosophy, like I don't think you guys should weight my claim very heavily. But if I made a claim about like neuroimmunology, maybe weight my claim a little bit more when I'm validating something in that field. And that particularly is what I don't think many people have at all. And so we have had kind of teams that are developing AI agents for like either like a wellness app or like different things that are coming to us and saying, hey, we actually need a lot of validation on this from experts. And that's kind of what they're coming to us with.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So in the reinforcement from human feedback, reinforcement learning from human feedback part, ResearchHub is really providing the HF, the human feedback. That makes a lot of sense actually. So the other thing that you mentioned before is like in the process about these different personalities where you have the editor and then you have different peer reviewers. I think that I was just fascinated by it. It's like a way to have the paper be reviewed by multiple different people at the same time, and they actually have different views. When I ran my own paper, like one of them, my paper was in philosophy, psychology, and one of those is called phenomenology. And there was a phenomenology expert selected by the editor, and then there was also a more empirical psychologist selected, and you could really see the different personalities. And the one was kind of commanding the paper, like was kind of happy with the paper because it was more philosophical, and the other one was like, it's not going into empirical evidence. I need more evidence from experiments, and it was really different feedback. So it was really valuable for me as the author to kind of figure out how different people would react and how I can convince different people and what maybe might be lacking from different perspectives. So it's actually kind of a useful tool already. And so that was impressive to me. Curious to see what's going to happen if it eventually will be fine-tuned by more human feedback. So now I do think we kind of understand the software. What I would love to know is like, what's your vision for this? Like, what is maybe the first, like the short term vision? What's happening right now in Artemis? What is needed there? What is happening? And then maybe you could elaborate on the long term vision where you see it go and how it might be integrated in ResearchHub.
Okay, so short term, it's very much going to be like the reinforcement learning side. Right now, these are like fairly primitive. They do a pretty good job. I think they can be tuned a lot better. So like from an immediate thing that's like on the horizon. I think the like embedding in integrations or standalone product, all of that is still like open. There's a lot of things that can happen. One thing popping up right now, for example. So we have an editor that just joined us. He's an assistant professor at USC. His name is Ruslan, and Ruslan had this problem of him and his students needed to like scour like 100 or 150 papers, and they wanted to pull like various like kind of information and parameters out of all those papers, because they wanted to see, in the field of stroke, a lot of, preclinical trials or preclinical drugs or therapies seemed like promising, but never translated well into humans. So he was wondering, what about some of these preclinical trials can we tease apart that made it such that these things were not successful down the road, or these things were successful down the road. But to be able to like parse all that information and pull those things out of the paper takes a lot of time. And, it's not directly related to peer review or editorial services, but what our AI agents have to do is they have to screen the paper anyway, and they have to absorb that information, and then they take it one step further in doing a critical assessment with the information that it absorbed. Alternatively, so like if that was one fork, usage, another fork is actually something that popped up just recently, which is extracting this information, searcher, and maybe putting it into a nice CSV file. So for example, you can say, hey, in these 100 papers, these are all of the models that were used. 80 of them used mouse models, mus musculus, 20 of them used like zebrafish. And they had an n equals this across the different ones, and then pulled down a bunch of columns of parameters, and then tried to make sense of that for the researcher and help them hypothesize, hey, this mouse model is going to lead to a more robust clinical outcome. And so we should actually avoid using, or actually even avoid completely funding stuff that uses a model that we know to not be very translatable. So that's like one interesting thing that I think is just now popping up, that it's going to, yeah, I hope that it would help us like kind of narrow down, like, you know, even mouse models, like you have xenograft models, you have humanized mice, you have transgenic animals. So like knowing even which subsets of those animals are the ones that are going to like lead to better like clinical outcomes is huge. And, you know, even stuff around like hypothesis, you know, generating a hypothesis, you know, one that's like relevant is always like a panel. You're choosing a panel for like doing a nanostring, or you're doing a panel for like some kind of sequencing thing. You know, what genes do you select? You know, like all these different permutations. So I think that's a great thing that can happen. As it pertains to ResearchHub, one thing we're thinking too is like having it be like kind of an editorial pre-check. We'll actually use our AI editors and our AI reviewers to pre-check screen things. You know, that can help the author before they want to go submit it officially into a publication. I think that's really cool. Another one that's really exciting to me is we have a native electronic lab notebook. So you can imagine when you're in the lab typing, you know, it'll suggest your different citations while you're like producing your manuscript. It, you know, recommend experiments to do. Maybe if it has a track record of all the other like work that you've done throughout the year. There's a lot that it can do. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it plays out. I think the like really impactful things will probably be around like how to best like experimental design and do hypothesis. But I also think that's one of the hardest ones.
Great, thank you, Jeff, for this update. Before we go back to you, Jeff, I had like somebody in the audience, so to say, raise their hand. Dr. UZ. So you want to raise a question? Please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for Jeffrey, and the ResearchHub has done a lot of the great efforts on this side. And congratulations for the new AI paradigm of ResearchHub. And my question is that because when we reviewing some papers, the most important part is about checking their novelty. This is a very specific question. So how the ResearchHub ultimately is to check the paper's novelty? I mean, maybe if we can describe the process, because this is the key for pushing the human age barrier, right? Right, novelty. Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's a really good question, and I think it's like a little bit of a hard one. So right now, I think how do you decipher, I suppose, novelty? You decipher it by like having to like essentially screen and scour like the entire corpus of like scientific literature in your particular field, maybe even in like adjacent fields. So that requires like a lot of like specific kind of like it requires like a pretty vast amount of like kind of knowledge base. And so I think right now the way that like the agents are designed, it doesn't really like go and dig through every single paper and published about every single like thing in that field. But I think that certainly like get them to a point where it's a lot closer to that, so they'll have a better kind of comparison of the paper that they're assessing in the grander like scheme of how it fits into like every paper that's published, you know. And then how do you assess, like, you know, maybe something is novel because it's never been done, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's like impactful, you know what I mean? So like having the ability to decipher between like the effective impact of something versus the like novelty, I think will be really important. I know that a team, DSci Labs, also they have Gen Novelty score, which I think is like a good like step in the right direction. But I think from my understanding, this is done like kind of like retrospectively and not in real time with like as new data gets, or new papers get published. So I think there might still be some room to work with there. But I just know that at like a high level.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. This is very interesting. So thank you, Jeff. Very interesting. So you mentioned the impact, right? But I mean, for when the scholars evaluate the impact, it is always has the bias. So that is how the AI models from ResearchHub can avoid the bias of because the impact is it is very hard to quantify, right? Because It is not right. Big guys or laureates they publish some new papers that is impactful. Maybe some small guys, some small scientists, they can create some new things that can have the impact in the future. So how to quantify or how to avoid the bias in this area? Yes, that is yes. I'm curious, but sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I think like at the beginning of the call we were talking about like where do the human reviewers like have strength versus like the AI reviewers, and right now like addressing and assessing impact and significance is still kind of under, I don't want to say under the jurisdiction of like the human reviewers, but it seems to be still the strength of the human reviewers. And there is like certainly some bias that's always there. I think kind of decentralizing that to allow for like many more people to give their input, because if a small subset of people at like a study section give their input about something, you're kind of beholden for those two people said about your grant, and maybe they think it is impactful or not impactful. Maybe they have bias because they work in a similar field. But the moment you make this public, it's kind of like a open source GitHub repo, right? Like everybody can look at it versus like a couple people. And when you do that, it's like a power analysis, right? You have like way more sample size. With way more sample size, it kind of like averages out to something. And not to say that like you still going to get bias, but it smooths some of those things out. And to be frank, like one of the things that I don't have a good answer for AI, and it's something that does worry me a little bit, is if there is like bias in majority of the papers in a particular field, I do worry that like AI will kind of perpetuate that, or like kind of add fuel to the fire. And I think about this in terms of like the whole fiasco with the Alzheimer's amyloid beta hypothesis. A lot of like the work that was developed and billions of dollars went into this amyloid beta hypothesis, and for like a decade and a half, all this work was developed. And because of some incentives, a lot of people, scientists will fabricate data or like, push something into significance if it didn't have it. And so I do worry that with that piece of like when a large set of a field, is built off of like faulty kind of foundation, then you worry kind of how, because the AI is going to go and assume that that's consensus. So that's one thing that I think we need to, as like the humans in the loop component, kind of keep in the back of our minds and make sure that we're like constantly still being rigorous and critical, and not just taking like kind of the information for granted.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow, so good, so good. I think that is so good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. I think we went kind of far into the AI part, and we could maybe switch over. But I would like, before we do that, I would like to talk about the current proposal that you guys have up about Project Artemis. Maybe you can quickly talk about that and tell the people where they can find it and read more in detail.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up. So we have a pre-registration that's live, and for anyone in the audience, what a pre-registration is essentially a public, grant or a public proposal. We tried to make it kind of short and abbreviated. It's not like a 80-page NIH grant. It's like a 2 or 3 page document. And the idea with this is you want to put like your materials and methods and like how you're going to do the assessment and analysis of things up front. So that way it's like kind of clearly identified and you kind of adhere to this. And if you're ever to like steer away or, not adhere to like that particular like protocol that you intended to do, you can make those claims out in the public and give a rationale for why you would steer away from it. So we, and that's one thing that ResearchHub, so essentially ResearchHub will like crowdfunding behind a researcher needing to put up this pre-registration. Then the community can come in and crowdfund around that. So we have one live for this Artemis project. A big part of like the funds we're going to go towards like incentivizing the human reviewers to come in and review, and then obviously we'll have pretty minimal AI costs because it's a lot cheaper, and then we also have costs for our expert human validators to come in. And really this proposal is to like crowdfund money to allow essentially our like human reviewers and our human validators paid to do the work, and then we can kind of tune the models with some of that information. It's been live for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've gotten a lot of feedback. I think like 40 to 50 comments on it, varying ranges of like just small, nice, positive things to like more critical kind of this thing should be changed, which is really great because the whole point of this is to be like critically assessed out in the public, get it turned over quickly. And so we're going to probably push out a version 1.5 of this. And in the version 1.5, we'll kind of make the flow charts a little bit smoother. and a little bit less complex. We're going to kind of refine some of the things made in the comments by some of the users. And I think one of the big ones is when we first started like thinking about this pre-registration, we didn't have too many native like human reviews that were available on ResearchHub that we had been documenting or assessing in the proper way at the time. Now that we're like 2 or 3 months ahead of that, we actually have enough human reviews as it is right now for us to essentially be able to do a lot of the work that we want to do. So for the version 1.5, we'll again fine tune all the stuff that I told you, but we're also going to like remove the entire like cost or budget for the human peer review part, and then only keep budget for the human validation or human editor role. And so this should cut the costs tremendously. It'd probably bring it down by like 80% or so. And then we hope to like then kind of push the initiative, crowdfund for it, and then get those human experts paid to do a lot of this A/B testing or like the flashcard style thing, maybe some more in-depth validation, and then hopefully we'll open source all of like the content that comes out of that, and then we hope that like reinforcement learning on some of our models, and then hopefully build out some tool that's really useful to.
Great. I love that you guys are basically refining it based on the experiences and comments from other people. So we can basically stay tuned for more updates in the future. It seems this seems to be an active area of development. For anybody who's interested, you can really go now or after the space. You can click into the tweet that I shared above, and I think at the very last tweet of that thread there will be a link to ResearchHub where you have a proposal. Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for your insights here. Now I would like to kind of switch the gears and move from Artemis to like just more community updates. We're going to do sort of a quick fire round. I'm just going to go over some topics, and you can maybe provide the updates from your perspective. And anybody else who has questions or input here, please raise your hand. I'll bring you up on stage. Yeah, Jeff, are you ready for that?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's go. So then, as a first point, I know you guys are working on proof of talk. Can you maybe explain to us what proof of talk is and what you're working on there?
Yes. So Proof of Talk is a big conference. I think this is the 3rd or 4th annual Proof of Talk. It's in Paris. It's in a really beautiful venue in the Louvre, and it's got some of like the biggest. It's a very kind of not DeSci, but like crypto focused event. But it's got a lot of the kind of more institutional enterprise grade types of folks that are in attendance. So we're in conversation with the organizers, and they're big fans of DeSci. And so they will actually want to set up a 2-day DeSci track at Proof of Talk. So we're currently in like the stage of like, gathering a bunch of different participants that would be involved there. But I would encourage, anyone who's in like the more kind of blockchain and crypto space, take a look at the participants there. And, I think it'll be an exciting one to get DeSci in front of like a really kind of, institutional grade group of people, I would say. And there'll also be a large attendance of universities around the area, a lot of them from UK, so like the Cambridges and the Oxfords and stuff like that. There'll be a lot of people coming in from there too. So we're hoping to do a round table as well as do like a ResearchHub workshop on top of like some of the keynotes and panels and stuff.
Amazing. So in short, basically mainstream crypto with like some of the biggest crypto brands and people is embracing DeSci and asking you guys to organize it, the DeSci side of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at the website. It's called Proof of Talk, and you get a flavor for like kind of what the people are like.
Yeah, great. Then there's some updates from like the outreach team. We have some updates on like using some tools on LinkedIn, stuff that's happening there.
Yeah. So I can add some color there. So the AI tools we're developing, we're developing some like really kind of unique custom in-house AI agents, for a lot of the editor and review work. But, a big thing that we launched recently was the ResearchHub Journal. We want to do some outreach for that, and also some outreach to people for, who have received kind of community reviews on their preprints on ResearchHub. So we've been doing a lot of things here with just a lot of like standard automation, not standard, but like unique automation things that are non-AI. So like Zapier integrations and like, some mail suite and, things like that to help automate. We've on Airtable in the background. To automate some outreach there. We're having a lot of success with LinkedIn. We're using an AI tool to help kind of like shortlist a set of people based off of like, some of the commentary or conversations they generally have on LinkedIn if they're open science advocates. So we're having like, I think a really good outreach effort on that side of things. So we're getting a lot of attention. And as always, we have like a peer reviewer job post up on LinkedIn. And, usually when that goes live, we get about 100 or so applicants a day that want to come and peer review and actually get paid to peer review. So I think just generally like pretty solid, productive outreach efforts. Because at the end of the day, like a project, you can only market your project so much. You need to get your users, and you need to have your users be recurring users.
Okay, great. So positive numbers and success rates on the outreach strategy. Then we have another update on a new app, or like a new version of the current web app. Can you give us some more insight into that?
Yeah, I would love to. And like Tyler, feel free to request to come up to speak, because you're like way more in the weeds than this. But there will be a new app. I think that like kind of an internal beta is going to go live pretty soon, and we'll test it like more in-house and make sure things get cleaned up and polished up. But it's like a whole gutted out like architecture. So it's like a new changed up architecture. And so things will get a lot easier. All like the commenting, the like kind of when you're writing peer reviews, you have a lot more functions. You're able to save your work in places. The lab notebook's going to be a lot more seamless. There's going to be AI features that are built in there. The whole UX is going to look different. So smoother, like Research Coin onboarding and offboarding, right, which is a big pain point for people. So yeah, there'll be a really, really big revamp that the team, ResearchHub Inc. team, has been working on really for the last the whole quarter. So I think they're going to be, I know they'll be proud of it. So I think I'm excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah, I also want to say something, because I too have been chatting with Tyler about this update, and I see he requested to speak maybe. Yeah, he did. So let me bring him up. Tyler, want to add some color to this?
We're going to do it in kind of like a rolling release, where we're going to aim for all of these things to be released sort of eventually. And we're going to start with an improved notebook editor, a new funding feature, brand new feeds with following too, and a couple other like small things. But then we're also going to continue to roll out like new improvements, like you were mentioning too, over the next couple months, in addition to like new features. So just to keep like kind of expectations tempered too. It might not all be delivered at once, but it's going to be, we built the foundation to deliver all this stuff a whole lot faster in the future. We kind of rebuilt the entire front end web app in a way that is really compatible with modern AI coding tools. So it just lets us move like probably like 10 times faster than we have in the past. So it's a really nice change.
Amazing. So we're not only going to see some front facing updates, but we're also going to basically have a faster development cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, you unmuted there for a second. Do you have something to add here?
No, it was just kind of like just to say it's really exciting, because I think it's like laying a lot of the seeds and like the dividends. Like I think the dividends are already probably paying off, but I think they'll definitely pay off over the course of the next few years, because 10x it's like a kind of like glycolysis. It's like you have to sink in some ATPs to like make more ATPs later. So I think it's like if the human body evolves to do that, I think it makes sense to implement some operations like that.
Yeah, that's actually often a general principle. Even in chemistry with biology, chemistry, not so far-fetched like exothermic reactions. But yeah, anyway, let's go to the next update. So that's an exciting one, and seems kind of big to like revamp the whole app. I don't think we can top that with any of the other ones on the list, but we have here endowment. So there's some kind of endowment going on. It's also related to the update.
Yeah, so this is related, and I'm glad Tyler's up here too, because he's actually working on more of like the integration implementation of this. So for those who are, so Tyler alluded to like a funding feature, right? We're revamping. We have an alpha version of that right now. We're going to have like a much more polished up version of that coming out pretty soon. Part of that is, this difficulty of when you're crowdfunding with crypto, how can like these crowd funds kind of get converted more seamlessly to US dollar that ultimately ends up making it to the institution or the researcher at the institution. So that would be one. And then two is this, working with this team endowment, we'll be able to essentially have like tax exemptions or tax deductible deductions for donors. So now it's like if I donate using my RSC on the platform, I will actually receive like a tax deduction or exemption for the donation that I made, if it's going to a researcher at an institute. So that's some of the things there. The team's been really great. I have nothing but positive things to say about them, and I hope that'll get implemented soon. Tyler, do you have anything else to add, maybe more on the technical standpoint?
Yeah, I think you covered the main points. And just to reiterate too, it's really difficult for academics to get involved in anything crypto, just because it's really intimidating. And we know like the UI and UX of everything is like not super polished. So having this endowment wrapper does like two things primarily. One is it lets anyone who donates projects, they get tax deductible status ideally on their donations. And we have to confirm that, but that's the goal. And then the second is that the universities and the academics who are actually receiving the money can have it handled for them. They don't have to go through the whole process of getting crypto, swapping it, taking to a bank account, maybe having some weird tax complications. and all that kind of crazy stuff, it's all taken care of by like these 501c3 nonprofits that already exist. An endowment basically connects the dots between people who want to fund and then people who need to receive the funding. So it's a really great partnership.
Amazing. Thanks for the update here. For anybody who didn't notice, I silently put the tweet of Proof of Talk where you can see a bunch of their speakers pinned here to the chat. Some names like Sergey Nazarov from Chainlink, Justin Sun from Tron, or Dan Held, like an early Bitcoiner. He works in Asymmetric. It's a general partner there. So these names, I think, ring a bell for many crypto people. And so it's amazing that DeSci will now be part of the same event where these people are already speaking. Then time to go to the next update. We have here the scientific advisory board, Jeff, that we assembled. What are the updates there?
Yeah, so that one's right around the corner. So we'll hopefully it always takes a little longer than you want to, but hopefully in a week or two, be able to announce some people that are part of a scientific advisory board. We found that one big problem with starting the journal is this cold start problem of reputation and prestige. And a lot of people won't publish, in a journal, even if it's new. They kind of need that reputation that's behind it. And also just kind of the general guidance from people who have been there before. So yeah, I'm excited to share probably more on that in a week or two, but it'll be, I hope, a pretty exciting group of scientific advisors that have already given us some advice already, and we have kind of a close relationship with them. So just kind of cementing that relationship a little bit more and having them really help.
Oh, you kind of cut off there now. Is this a bug on the space? Maybe it is.
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're back. Okay. It's basically saying cement the relationship and kind of also make it more public, so that people can learn about this relationship, and also it builds some trust for people who might not yet trust the ResearchHub journal, since that takes a while to build that kind of trust. Let's move on to the next point here. The ResearchHub shop. What's coming there, Jeffrey?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of developed already on the back end. And I think hopefully, I don't want to give a timeline, but what are we in March? Hopefully in maybe the end of March, maybe early April, mid-April, we can have a shop that will go live. We'll start off with some of the core basic stuff, we have a lot of people coming asking for t-shirts, t-shirts, hoodies, and hats. So we'll have hopefully a nice, easy Shopify kind of integration for people to come and just buy some merch over here. We'll make it kind of nice and clean, and just distribute them out to people. And one is just I think really just gravitate towards merch, and then two, it's also a nice way to even advertise for ourselves via just organically through people who are excited about our project, which oftentimes are kind of sometimes high profile professors or scientists or biotech entrepreneurs and things like that.
Honestly, I'm loving that update. I can't wait to order some ResearchHub merchandise, and I love the ResearchHub t-shirt and hoodie that I already got when I came to SciCon, but I can't wait to get some more to wear them more often. I think these were almost all the updates. And lastly, I have one update that I would like to mention. Probably many of you have seen it, but just in case you have not seen it yet, I would like to share one more tweet in this space. Last week, we posted a testimonial video with a lot of the peer reviewers that are peer reviewing on ResearchHub, and their thoughts on paid peer review, their thoughts on publishing. And I thought the video came out great. So I would love to share it here so you guys can get some insights into what other users are thinking about ResearchHub. Let's see if it's going to pop into the space if I share it here.
Yeah, we can see it, Johnny.
Great. Yeah, then I think we can sort of end it here. Maybe we can just leave this up for a minute. Anybody else wants to contribute with a question or a comment? Raise your hand. I'll bring you up on the stage. Any last words from you, Jeff or Tyler?
I think for me is, personally, the thing that I'm the most excited about for the year is the direction of Artemis. I think we're developing it at a pretty fast rate, and there's a bunch of it's kind of an open environment of what we can do with it. And I think we're starting to build out a tool that's a little bit unique, but I think where I'm really excited about is how we can engage the entire scientific community on the platform to come in and be participants in kind of crafting Artemis. So I'm really excited, and if you guys are interested in any of that, I think stay on the lookout, and also just head to ResearchHub and look for open kind of bounties for peer review or for validation.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I think we can sort of end it here. Yeah, get involved. Go to ResearchHub, check out the Artemis pre-registration for peer review. Follow on X. on Research Foundation and ResearchHub. And yeah, I'll see you all on the next X space.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Johnny, and good seeing everybody.
Yes,
Good to see you guys.
see you. Ciao.